Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. Serious, what's the scariest thing that ever happened to you? When I was about 13, I was on holiday with my family in Spain, and my mum was floating in an inflatable tube in the sea whilst my dad, brother and I were playing on the sand. She had drifted a little way out, but we didn't think anything of it. After a while, she drifted a little further. She was waving her arms and yelling, but we couldn't hear the yells over the noise of the beach. It just looked to us as though she was waving at us, and my brother and I were just waving back. Soon my dad realized that she was actually waving her arms in terror and trying to get our attention. I quickly realized she was in danger and started screaming and crying. My dad dashed into the water, dived in and started swimming like a madman. Turns out, the water was so shallow that if she'd put her feet down fully, she'd have been able to stand. My dad grabbed her hand and literally walked her back to shore. A good old laugh at her expense was had by all. It's okay to laugh at my story. Early 2000s I went to Marine Corps boot camp. I was on the shooting range, having my packed lunch we were given. We were told do not eat the cookies, even though they officially could not tell us this. It was an implied order. I decided that screw them, I'm eating my dang cookies. They were weeks-old Chips Ahoy, they were so dry, I started choking. I'm talking stars in my eyes, blacking out. I managed to throw my hands up to the I'm choking motion, and my drill instructor came over, gave me the Heimlich, and as I was blacking out and collapsing, he managed to get it out of me. Afterwards he was like, "Are you okay? Are you sure you're okay?" After nodding yes, he said, "I told you not to eat the f***ing cookies, dipshit," and then I did push-ups until I agreed that eating cookies was not a good idea for my health. I was diagnosed with a kind of brain cancer a few years ago. Astrocytoma. It has progressed to grade 2 now. There is no cure for it yet. But the day it was relayed to me was the most scariest days of my life. I had an extremely good paying job, a bright career ahead. I had a beautiful and caring girlfriend. I was just 25, I was worldly, had every good kind of pleasures life could offer. Frequent bouts of headache and blinding pains got me to a doctor, and after tons of tests and scans it was revealed. It took me few days to process the information. I hid it from my family and friends to not worry them, had to mask the effects, use foundation and makeup so as not to look pale. When the cancer progressed to stage 2 I had to tell my parents. They were heartbroken. I was still trying to get in terms with the direction my life was going. She had a bright future, a good job. Forced her to concentrate on her job more. I still have kept my job though. I wanted to quit, but that's the only source of income which can take care of my bills and insurances and for my family. Now at 27 I realize the simple pleasures of life. I like how the water flows through my throat. I like when people smile politely at you. If someone says a good morning or good night it makes my day. Earlier I was a cutthroat, ruthless competitor at work. Now I handle things in a much more pleasant way. Every day gives me new hope to beat my illness. Sometimes scary is good. I was kidnapped last year. I'm a musician. An acquaintance came to my show, said my set sounded great, stuck around and had a good time, and offered me a ride home, which I accepted. I get in his car and we're off, but he's going in the wrong direction. Starts telling me he's going to cut me and leave my body on the side of the road. Says he's gonna stomp my face in the dirt so no one recognizes me. He has a knife. We come to a red light and I try to get out. He speeds through the red light screaming about how I'm a f***ing idiot and a stupid f***ing bitch and I just don't get it yet, and he's going to take me to hell, but first we're going to purgatory. This goes on for like an hour until he pulls down a random dirt road into the woods and gets quiet. When he parked the car I got out and ran. I ran through the woods, into someone's yard, and hid under their deck. I had my phone and used GPS to find where I was and locate the train station. Eventually I made it to the train station a couple hours later. While I was walking I was afraid every approaching car might be him. I went through people's yards, hid behind bushes, and ran through open spaces. I was almost to the train station and some random car pulled up next to me. I was soggy from the rain and beyond exhausted because at this point it was almost 4:30 a.m., and I was just like, wow. Dr. told me I had lymphoma, cancer. For a week I thought I was going to die and was considering all kinds of preparation. Turns out it was a false diagnosis and I was fine. My wife went into labor late one night while we were still at home. As I was getting the hospital bag all ready, this was a few weeks before her due date, She said we have no time, he is already coming and she needs to lie down. It was at this point I thought I was going to lose him. I delivered our son while on the phone with 911. As he was being born he would only come out about halfway as the cord was wrapped around his neck. I had to gently ease him back in to unwrap the cord. The paramedics arrived about 10 minutes after everything was done. Accidental home birth 010. Would not do again. Heart attack. Browsing Reddit when all of a sudden my heart starts hopping around in my chest. Not really painful, but I knew something was really wrong. Called an ambulance immediately. I was held at gunpoint by about 30 heavily armed drug gang members in a favela in Rio de Janeiro. This thread is already old. Hope I don't get buried. My family and I were going on a little road trip, can't remember where or what for. Dad driving, mom shotgun, sister next to me, possibly my brother-in-law as well. Anyway, we were driving around and around this steep and super narrow hill. Went around a corner a bit too fast or something, and before you know it half the car was hanging off the cliffside. Dad managed to reverse back onto the road. I was a crying mess. I still get nightmares about it. At least we would have died together. So and I were swimming at Assateague State Park in the ocean, about 150 feet from shore with a strong current pushing to my right. Look to my right and see the fins and huge bodies of about 7 sharks just under the surface of the water, circling about 25 feet away. I tell my son to swim fast back to shore, but he's paralyzed with fear, saying wait, and trying to grab my arms, but if I stayed we would only both get pushed into the swarm, so I swam away as hard and fast as I could. I sometimes vividly hallucinate just as I'm waking up, and have seen huge bugs crawling over my bed and walls before. To make it worse, I have a slight phobia of them anyway. This morning however I saw one of my housemates sitting on the sofa near my bed with her face covered in blood grinning at me. Being smothered with a pillow was pretty scary. I was in an abusive relationship for a few years and one of the incidents involved him coming home drunk, crawling into bed, and putting a pillow over my face. He'd tried to suffocate me before, and after, several times, by putting his hand over my mouth and nose if I cried when he was yelling at me. This was a 220-pound man sitting on my chest holding a pillow over my entire face while absolutely nothing I did could stop him. Then he just stopped and went to sleep. Perhaps equally scary was some time later when he told me that his alcohol level had nothing to do with that incident and he was in complete control and knew exactly what he was doing. I have a lot of respect for the differences in biology between men and women. I have no delusions that men and women can ever be completely equal in all respects, because I've had a man pick me up and throw me across the room like I was nothing. Inevitably there will be some comment about, well, you shouldn't have stayed then, idiot. When the abused person does threaten to leave, they are met with consequences. When I was thrown across the room I had been trying to pack and leave. I thought my leg might be broken, he told me, see? No one even cared. And it was true. No one in the store did anything. At one house we shared a wall with a police officer and I would always run to that wall when I was being attacked and I would scream for help. They never helped. So think about that the next time you're about to make some scathing remark about someone who has been abused. That someone is a person and they deserve better than that. This is a repost. Junior year of high school, 16-year-old me taking the subway home. Notice this large man with a shaved head and creepy pedo smile sitting across from me, just staring at me like I was a juicy steak. Feeling uncomfortable, I get up and move to the next car. I sit down. I decided to move to another car, not the next one, but 2 away, figuring he'd leave well enough alone. Not so. He followed. I notice that we are nearing my stop, so I get up and make the move to the next car, and proceed to get out of the car onto the platform as the doors close. I nearly SHD myself. Train pulled out. I dashed out the station and grabbed the first bus out. I felt I was just minutes away from being an after-school special. I woke up in the middle of the night with a man standing over me. He had my cell phone in his hand. It was charging and on my bedside table, and when he saw I had woken up he repeatedly told me he was going to kill me. He made his escape with my phone and other valuables. Fortunately no one was hurt and he did not kill me. I can tell a more detailed story if this gets some attention. When I was 10 years old and playing in the forest with friends, a group of young men with motorbikes went by. It was not unusual, and I knew they went there often, so I just put myself out of the path. One of them apparently thought it would be hilarious to just rush towards me and turn at the last second. So many things could have gone wrong. And I remember very clearly the sight of him coming at full speed at me, and the trace of his sharp turn on the mud. I have leukemia, but that is not the scary part. Not even chemotherapy. After the intensive chemo, which was given through a catheter in my arm, it was to be removed. I was put out and underwent a bone marrow biopsy, after which I would wake with no catheter. For some reason, I managed to wake up. Here's the worst part. I still didn't get to the scary part, the wire snaps. I have a long piece of plastic flowing its way towards my heart. An hour of unnecessary paperwork later, I am taken for prep. Yes, prep. 1 hour I am alone being told about the consequences that could happen. Luckily prep was about 15 to 20 minutes. After all this I am taken to an OT. Due to my age I cannot be put out so frequently. So I am given an anesthetic, after which the doctor would make an incision near my shoulder, open up the vein, and pull it out. 30 minutes later I come out with those arm sling things to stop excess pressure on that vein. Having leukemia has saved me more than it troubled me. But this is damn scary for anyone. The thought that you can die just because of something like the elasticity of a plastic? 14-year-old me attacked and beaten by 4 grown men on the top floor of a block of flats. They were picking me up to throw me over the side when the police came. Requests for the story. So in a nutshell, 2 young teenagers, standing in shelter on a boring Friday night out of the rain and enjoying an illicit beer. Enter 4 men who took exception to our presence somehow. They were walking past and saw us, obviously looking for trouble, came over and began asking for drugs, to which we started to laugh, considering the notion of smoking even cigarettes hadn't entered our heads in our lives, never mind the notion of drug dealing. The building had an entrance at both sides, so we both thought it best to remove ourselves from the situation and promptly legged it up the stairs where we were, ran across the top balcony and planned to run down the other side and away. One punched my friend on his way past them, but I was cornered and received a fearsome beating. In the days after, you could see marks on my face where the laces from their boots had been whipping me while being kicked. They mocked my screams, kicked me from head to toe repeatedly while asking over and over why we were selling drugs. I continually refused to tell them my name, as we were still in dark times in Northern Ireland then, and there was a worry of them coming back for more with me or my family. As you would expect, I lay there not moving. If they were throwing me over, they were picking me up themselves, which they began to do. Literally at that second, one told the others to be quiet, as the police had shown up, and told me not to make a sound. At first I was behind them, but they obviously thought better of this in case I pushed one down the stairs, so they told me to go in front. Again I was told not to make a sound, at which stage instinct told me to get the FCK away, so I legged it downstairs and into the local shop a few yards away. The police were in there at that point, much to my relief. The men were so calm that they simply walked past and away. Karma would later strike a couple of them who died quite young, one in a motorcycle accident and the other I can't quite remember what happened. It effed me up for a long time. It was difficult for me to go out if I was unsure who would be around, and I was into my early 20s before that nervousness left me. Even walking past that building years after it happened would bring back the flashbacks, but they eventually demolished it. I was stabbed viciously by a nemesis for personal reasons and was in a coma for a little while. When I awoke after some gnarly coma dreams, I found out my best friend had been assaulted in a completely separate incident. I visited him in the hospital for days, but he never recovered. All I do is think about death and how scary and final it is. So when I saw it live in person, it was like all my biggest nightmares came to fruition at once. The worst part is no one knows who his mystery assailant was. The cops basically stopped investigating due to no evidence. So my best friend, my hero, my mentor, died in front of my eyes. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever witnessed, and I have yet to recover. I was on a cross-country road trip with 3 of my closest friends. We had just finished undergrad and were driving from New York to LA, camping in state parks and doing some hiking along the way. Our second and third nights was spent in Yellowstone in mid-May. The first night was frigid and our tent froze solid. On the second night, a warm front blew through. With the incessant wind, I don't think I fell asleep until well after midnight. I woke up to the continued rustling of wind just as the sun came up. Underneath that sound was a closer sound though. I convinced myself it was the wind and tried to fall back asleep, until I heard a snort. And then something brushed against the tent. I froze and tried to be as quiet as I could. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.